Hello students, welcome to Baji Rao IAS Academy. So today is 22nd October 2023. So we have been discussing Jammu Kashmir Civil Services question paper. So these question papers and questions are also very much similar to UPSC examination. So the fifth question which we are going to discuss is about Guru Nanak Dev Ji. So the question is, discuss the relevance of Guru Nanak. So it is asked that discuss the relevance of Guru Nanak teaching in 21st century. Now, Guru Nanak Dev Ji is a spiritual guru and he has preached several values and they are very important for 21st century, which has been increasingly facing the problems and the challenges like conflict, violence, war, discrimination, inequalities, and gender inequalities, caste discrimination. So, in this context, Guru Nanak Dev Ji teachings assumed significance and they are still very much relevant. Now, when you write this answer, you have to briefly give an introduction about Guru Nanak Dev Ji. So, firstly, when you start this answer, write introduction in this manner. So, Guru Nanak, we all know, a founder of Sikh religion. So, apart from a spiritual guru, he is a great poet, an eminent philosopher, and a notable humanist, and also a leading social reformer. Now, he very often advocates abolition of caste discrimination, a caste-based untouchability. He also very often preached the essential oneness of all religions, whether it is Hinduism and Islam. So there should be no communal conflict, communal violences. Now, Guru Nanak Dev Ji's life and teachings still hold great power and meaning for humanity in the 21st century, because now the 21st century has been facing several challenges, several problems. Now in this backdrop, Guru Nanak Dev Ji's teachings are very much relevant in 21st century. Now if you look at some of the important teachings of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, so one of the value which Guru Nanak Dev Ji emphasized on is oneness of God. It is Omkar, because he very often emphasizes on monotheistic belief in one God. So because at that time there was a bhakti movement that was taking place, and there's a clash and conflict between different religions. Even within Hinduism also there were different sects, and for example, a few sects believe in the monotheistic nature, dualistic nature of a god. So in a similar way, Guru Nanak Dev Ji emphasized on monotheistic belief of one god, and it is referred to as Omkar, so which means one creator. So creator of entire humanity is one. So he essentially believes in one creator. However, this is a very much relevant today because it promotes religious tolerance. There are widespread communal violence incidents in different parts of our country. Even religious based violence is often justified in different parts of the world as well. So therefore, in order to promote religious tolerance, the belief in one God is very important because it very often encourages people to see the common thread. So, for example, if we believe in oneness of a God, and holding a monotheistic belief in one God, so it is very often used as a common thread. Okay, so one God is a common thread, and this thread runs through all religions. So we can mention an example. For example, Muslim weavers making cloths for deities in Ayodhya, and also temples offering food and shelter to all destitute. There are examples and instances where all the destitutes are provided free food in temples. So therefore, belief in one God is very important to promote the value of tolerance in the society. And tolerance is very important in the contemporary society in order to promote the harmony the harmony between different religions, and also peaceful coexistence. Secondly, equality and social justice. We very often face problems like gender inequality, inequalities within different social groups in one particular region or in one country. And we often, very often, come across social injustice such as discrimination against lower caste, untouchables, and also disabled individuals. So, Guru Nanak Dev Ji have also emphasized on the value of equality, and he fought for the social justice, because Guru Nanak Dev Ji, when he was, on his spiritual journey, he vehemently opposed the discrimination based on caste, creed, and gender. So he very vehemently, he was very critical of the discrimination based on caste, creed, and gender. So, in fact, one of the most fundamental teaching of Guru Nanak Dev Ji is human beings are equal in the eyes of God. So, all the human beings are equal. So, this is in line with the principle that Manava Seva is Madhava Seva. So, that was given by Swami Vivekananda. Okay, so he also held that all human beings are equal, so therefore all should be treated equally. And third, for example, this principle of equality and social justice can be linked to the ideals like equality, justice. They are given in the constitution. For example, if you look at India's constitution, preamble mentioned about justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. And those principles like equality and justice are also mentioned in fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy. So, in order to ensure welfare state, the principles like equality and social justice are very important, and these principles can also be can also applicable to Universal Declaration of Human Rights that is given by United Nations. So it leads to the greater protection of human rights or a better human rights regime across the world. So there will not be violation of the human rights, especially minorities, women, and children, so in the name of pursuing their own independent national interests. So therefore, Guru Nanak Dev Ji's teachings are not just relevant for India, but they are also relevant for entire earth, okay, entire globe. And Guru Nanak Dev Ji also emphasized on service to fellow human beings, because a selfless service is something which really helps us find ourselves. Okay, so there's a quote also from Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, so the best way to find yourself is lose yourself in the service of others. So in a similar way, Guru Nanak Dev Ji also emphasized on selfless service to others. So, which Guru Nanak Dev Ji called Seva. For example, if you look at Gurudwaras, if you go to Gurudwaras, in Gurudwaras they offer langar, food. So, irrespective of caste, gender, and place of birth, nationality, they will serve meals to everyone. So, therefore, Guru Nanak Dev Ji has emphasized on seva, selfless service to others. So, this concept is very much relevant today because this promotes the values like altruism and community engagement. For example, there are several wealthy individuals. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which has been working for the empowerment of women and also education, healthcare, and improving the agricultural incomes in poor and developing countries. So, such seva and altruism are very much relevant. So we can mention example of gurudwaras where temples offering langas. Langa means food. So the next value Guru Nanak Dev Ji has emphasized was Vand Chako. So it means sharing. So we also know that there is a term called sharing is caring. So it means we need to share a love. We need to share essential things which are needed by other individuals. For example, sharing is at the root of compassion and empathy, and compassion and empathy are very important for a just a society. So in this context, Guru Nanak Dev Ji has emphasized on sharing. He called it as Vand Chako, because he says that sharing whatever God has given to you with others and helping those who are in need. So helping those who are in need will gives rise to compassionate attitude and showing empathy towards the weaker sections and destitute people. So we can give examples of philanthropists like Ajim Premji. He donating for civil social welfare. In fact, he donated around you know $1 billion worth of shares for education of girl child and education of people who are living in rural areas. And in fact, philanthropists have also launched various initiatives as part of the corporate social responsibility projects. One is Nahinkalin, that is launched by Mahindra, and people donating blood platelets during COVID-19 pandemic. So during COVID-19 pandemic also, people used to donate platelets and blood for the needy people. So this is also in line with the Guru Nanak Dev Ji's principle of sharing. No, the other major value Guru Nanak Dev Ji has emphasized on is respect for the nature. Now, the degradation of environment is one of the major problem. Now, degradation of the nature has resulted in several problems, environmental problems, and even it has been resulting in zoonotic diseases. COVID-19 is one such example. So, therefore, Guru Nanak Dev Ji emphasized on responsible stewardship of earth and its resources. These resources should be responsibly used. So this is in line with Mahatma Gandhi's principle that the earth is sufficient for man's need, but not for man's greed. So in a similar fashion, these resources which are available should be used in a much more responsible way. So that is the essence of entire human existence, because planet Earth is not just for our existence. So entire wild fauna and flora should also they also have equal rights. Now, in today's world, environmental degradation and climate change are pressing concerns. So they are pressing challenges. So therefore, the teachings of Guru Nanak Dev Ji remain relevant. So they are very important in order to protect and conserve environment. Now, if you look at India's Directive Principles of State Policy, Article 48A, and also the fundamental duties. So they have emphasized on conservation and protection of environment. And in the current context, Guru Nanak Dev Ji's teachings are very much relevant in environmental protection and conservation. So in line with these teachings, Government of India already launched Life Mission, Life Movement, and also One Mahotsavs. So they are primarily aimed at protecting and conserving the environment, forests, wildlife. Okay, so life essentially means that lifestyle for environment. So this movement is launched by Prime Minister Narendra Modi during the Glasgow summit. So these are the important and essential teachings of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. So when you write a conclusion for this answer, you just write the conclusion that these values which are preached, propounded by Guru Nanak Dev Ji are still relevant in our country and in entire globe, because this ensures more responsible, compassionate, empathetic society where everyone's rights are respected and everyone are treated equally. So there will be no discrimination and deprivation of few sections of the society, and that is the essence of a peaceful uh, uh, Earth. So we very often emphasizes on the value of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, where we treat entire planet as entire Earth as one family. So therefore, Guru Nanak Dev Ji's principle will help in tackling major challenges which world currently facing. So this is how you can write conclusion for this answer. So the next question is about Aryan invasion. So when you read Indus Valley Civilization, you briefly come across Aryan invasion as well. So even though it is not yet proved, so there were some myths and hypotheses about the Aryan invasion. So this question has asked about Aryan invasion. Is it a myth or reality? So if you say it is a myth, then you have to justify your answer by giving reasonable arguments in favor that it is a myth. And if you write it is a reality, in order to prove that also you have to give reasonable arguments. So it is very often held that uh, the decline of the Indus Valley civilization, the reason for decline of Indus Valley civilization is because of Aryan invasion. So they have a swift moving horses and they have much more advanced weaponry than the people who are living in the Indus Valley civilization. So therefore, over a period of time, because of the Aryan invasion, the Indus Valley civilization has perished. So however, this is just a myth. This is just a myth, and the question has been asked that is it a myth or a reality. So you have to write answers both in favor and also, I mean, if you think it is a myth, then you have to give the arguments in favor of that. So this image you can see here uh, uh, resembles the Aryan invasion. Now, first in the introduction, when you write introduction for this answer, first write what is Aryan invasion theory. So the Aryan invasion theory is actually a hypothesis. So it is just a hypothesis. We still do not have the relevant evidence to prove that Aryan invasion did took place. So therefore, it is a hypothesis and it was developed in the 20th century. So this Aryan invasion states that a group of people called Aryans, a group of people who are called as Aryans, they have invaded the northern India. And once they invaded northern India, they destroyed the Indus Valley civilization. So this is the essence of Aryan invasion theory. So, however, few people who oppose, who do not agree with the Aryan invasion theory, they says that this theory argue that this is just a hypothesis, and this hypothesis was created to justify the British conquest of India. So they criticize the Aryan invasion theory, and they do not agree that Aryan invasion really did took place. So they also say that the Aryan invasion hypothesis was created to justify British conquest of India. And they also say that there has no archaeological or genetic basis for this Aryan invasion. So however, the Aryan invasion theory is still debated today, and subsequent genetic studies have cast doubt on the entire Aryan invasion theory. So subsequently, the genetic studies have been conducted. So these genetic studies reveal that there's no significant evidence to prove that Aryan invasion really takes place. Now, so what is the Aryan invasion theory? First, understand. So it is always understood that Aryans migrated from steppe happened after 2000 BC. So migrated from steppes. So steppes are grasslands in Central Asia. So it is always believed that Aryans were migrated from steppes uh, after 2000 BC. However, in the year 1953, Mortimer Wheeler, so he was a historian, Mortimer Wheeler. So he proposed that the invasion of Indo-European tribe from Central Asia, the Aryans caused the decline of Indus Valley civilization. So he primarily held that the reason for the decline of Indus Valley civilization is the invasion of Aryans or the Indo-European tribe from the Central Asia. So when it comes to the evidence for this, he cited that a group of 37 skeletons found in various parts of Mohenjo-daro. So Mohenjo-daro, a city in the Indus Valley civilization. So very important city, can be called as a nerve center of the Indus Valley civilization. So the evidence he cited was a group of 37 skeletons that were found in various parts of Mohenjo-daro, and passages in Vedas referring to battles and forts. So Vedas were also written during the Vedic period. So these Vedas have also mentioned about battles and forts, and taking this as an evidence, Wheeler held that uh, the Aryan invasion actually took place. However, soon after this hypothesis, several scholars have come forward and they started to reject Wheeler's theory, because the skeletons that were belonged to a period after the city's abandonment, and none were found near the citadel. Now, if you understand the Indus Valley civilization, its town planning, there's a citadel and lower town. And citadel is a place where socially uh, they well developed people or rich people used to live in at citadel, and lower town, relatively uh, less well off people live in a lower town. Okay, so that was rebutted. So the basis of this Aryan invasion theory. So what exactly is the basis of this Aryan invasion theory? So this was first propounded when linguistic similarities between Sanskrit and major European languages, they were discovered by European scholars. Now we had the colonial past. So during the colonial times, the European scholars have described there's a similarity, the linguistic similarity between the Sanskrit and also European language. So based on this evidence, scholars also claim that Aryan invasion did took place. Okay. Secondly, so this tool was used by colonizers to legitimize their rule in India. So once they established the Aryan invasion theory through linguistic similarities, they used this theory to legitimize their rule in India. And third, the theory hypothesizes that during 2000 BC, Aryans from Europe, they invaded or migrated into the Asian subcontinent. So this theory also believes this, even though there is no evidence, but this theory believes that during 2000 BC, Aryans from Europe, so they invaded and migrated into the Asian subcontinent. So this particular theory, the Aryan invasion theory, also believes that the Aryan invaders, killed the original Dravidians and set up the Aryan race in the South Asian subcontinent. So, this Aryan invasion theory believes that originally Indians were Dravidians. So, the indigenous inhabitants were Dravidians. Now, Aryans invaded and killed those original Dravidians and set up a Aryan race in the South Asian subcontinent. Right. So the Aryan invasion theory claimed that these invaders were the root of modern Indian civilization. So not the Harappan civilization. So those people who claim that Aryan invasion took place, they believe that the invaders, the Aryans, were the root of modern Indian civilization, but not the Harappan civilization or the Indus Valley civilization. So this is the entire basis of the Aryan invasion. Next, however, the theory of Aryan invasion was rebutted. Why? Because recently genetic studies were held the genetic studies with respect to the Aryans and the people of Indus Valley, and now modern Indians. Now, the recent studies have rebunked the theory after DNA samples. So, DNA samples were collected from 5,000-year-old Harappan remains. So, from the Harappan valley, DNA samples were collected. So, these DNA samples have proven that the modern Indians and Harappans have a similar genetic condition. So similar genes and similar genetic mapping. So it is different from the Aryans. So therefore, the entire Aryan invasion theory was rebunked after this genetic studies. Okay, uh, DNA was as part of the Rakigarhi project. So the DNA was extracted from the Rakigarhi. That was a Indus Valley site. Now, who were Harappans then? We need to understand who were Harappans then. So if Harappans were not Aryans, then who were Harappans? So Harappans actually who created the agricultural revolution in northwest India. So if you look at the Indus Valley civilization, so they are located somewhere in this area. Okay, so near about the Indus River, and also few parts in India as well. So this is the location of Harappan civilization. So they have created agricultural revolution in northwest India, and uh, they also built the Harappan civilization that were, I mean, they were actually the mix of first Indians and Iranians who spoke pre-Aryan languages. So pre-Aryan languages are languages which are not introduced by the Aryans. So before Aryans invaded India, or before Aryans came into India, there were certain languages, and those languages were spoken by Iranians who migrated from Iran to India. Okay, so the next point says that the Aryans were Central Asian steppe pastoralists. So they were not agriculturalists. So they were pastoralists, and they arrived India roughly between 2000 BCE to 1500 BCE. So when they uh, came to India, they also brought Indo-European languages to the subcontinent. Okay, for example, there were several Indo-European languages. Sanskrit is also considered as a Indo-European language. Okay, so this is how you have to write this answer. Now, after writing this answer, so whatever you have mentioned in the body part, just summarize this in conclusion, that Aryan invasion theory still remains a hypothesis, and there's no clear evidence to prove that Aryan invasion took place. So therefore, there is a need for comprehensive study in this regard. Okay. So however, the evidence shows that uh, Indians, the modern Indians, have a genetic similarities with people who are in the Harappan civilization, who used to live in the Harappan civilization. So this is how you can conclude this answer. So the next question which is being asked, it is about landslides. Now landslides have become a more frequent phenomenon in recent past. Particularly, we hear about landslides in Sikkim and several other Himalayan states, and we also hear about the landslides in Western Ghats. The major reason for landslides, such a increasing intensity of landslide, can be assumed to multiple reasons, whether it is heavy rain, heavy downpour, or torrential rains. And if you look at Himalayas, they are young mountains, so they are tectonically active mountains. So that could be another reason. And the next reason is deforestation also. Okay, deforestation could also be another reason for such a landslides. And there is an increasing human activity across these slopes and mining. So all these factors contribute. They cause landslides. So landslide very often disrupt the connectivity, and you know Apart from disrupting the connectivity, landslides also results in rivers changing their courses, floods, and also heavy human losses and infrastructural losses. So, in this context, the question has been asked as that differentiate between the causes of landslides in Himalayas and Western Ghats. So, what exactly are the causes of landslides in Himalayas and Western Ghats? Now, firstly, you need to define what is a landslide. So, what are landslides? So, landslides are a movement of mass of debris. Okay, for example, this is a mountain slope. Okay, and across this mountain slope, so there's a sudden release of debris from this mountain slope. So, if this mountain slope is a very steep mountain slope, so a movement of mass of debris, earth, rock, they usually sliding down under the effect of gravity. So because of the gravity, they used to slide down from the slope of a mountain, a steep slope of a mountain. So landslides are very common problem across Himalayas and Western Ghats. So very often there's a loss of lives because of the landslides. Now, in this context, we need to differentiate between the landslides which occur in Western Ghats and Himalayan region. So, first point is heavy mining activities, which are usually taking place in Western Ghats, is one of the major factor that has been leading to landslides. Now, for example, for minerals like coal, iron ore, and even for gravel. When we mine the slopes of a mountain, that could result in creation of a steep slopes, and not just steep slopes, and it could also result in deforestation and loosening of the topsoil of a mountain, and loosening of this topsoil with the effect of gravity further trigger landslides. So Himalayas are young mountains, and young mountains are because they are formed because of the tectonic activity. So they are under the influence of tectonic forces. So because of these reasons, Himalayas are considered as young, fragile mountains. So they are still growing. So because they are still growing, they are very much susceptible to natural landslides. So they're not just created by the anthropogenic activities, but they are still susceptible to natural landslides because they are tectonically active mountains. Secondly, deforestation for settlements of even for road construction is another major reason for these occurrence of these landslides. Because when we cut down trees on mountain slopes, then there's no force which can hold the soil together. So that could trigger landslides. And secondly, sediments in the mountains are consolidated and are loose. So in Himalayan rivers, generally the sediments are not consolidated. So they are loose. So when they are not consolidated, they're very often prone to landslides whenever there's a heavy downpour takes place, or whenever there's a deforestation that occurs. That results in landslides. Third, anthropogenic activities gave rise to anomalous slopes, and due to gravitational pull and rain, the overlying material comes down. So, in Western Ghats, human activities are much more concentrated. So heavy human activities, high number of human activities in Western Ghats, that is the ecologically sensitive region. Even though ecologically sensitive, these anthropogenic activities have been making Western Ghats more and more susceptible to landslides. So on the other hand, when we compare Western Ghats with Himalayas, they are tectonically active. So because of this tectonic activity, the plates are moving, the Asian plate colliding with the Eurasian plate. So this very often results in creation of instability. So therefore, these landslides can occur at any time, even during dry seasons also. They can occur even during the dry seasons as well. So third, concentration of heavy rainfall. For example, if you look at the location of Western Ghats, so this is India's map. If you look at the position of Western Ghats are located around this region. Okay, so there's a windward side also, and also windward side. So windward side receives heavy rainfall because of the influence of the southwest monsoon. So this windward side receives heavy rainfall, and that could result in triggering landslides. So the concentration of heavy rainfall in those areas trigger landfalls. So on the other hand, the steep and sharp slope in Himalayas are major factor for landslides. Since they are very young mountains and they are still growing and they are very active, they very often have a very steep and sharp slopes. So such steep and sharp slopes under the influence of gravity, there's a higher possibility of turning into a landslide. Right. So the windmill projects, so they have led to huge fractures on the mountains and thereby loosening the structures. For example, if you look at the windmill projects that are being taken up, the southern states like Kerala, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu, they have performing better. So therefore, because of a huge potential of wind energy generation, these windmill projects have been resulting in creation of fractures within the Western Ghats. So when they create fractures, they further loosen the structures and triggering landslides. So on the other hand, there were several anthropogenic activities within the Himalayas such as jhum cultivation, deforestation. So they also very often lead to landslides. When it comes to jhum cultivation, it is also similar to slash and burn cultivation. So in slash and burn cultivation, generally what happens is the indigenous people generally cultivate crops in one particular area, and after they harvest the produce, they just burn down the area. So they just burn down the area and abandon the area. So that could also associate with the that is very often associated with the deforestation, and deforestation will result in landslides. So we can mention examples in Western Ghats like Ratnagiri, Satara, and Idukki. So they very often face this problem of landslides. In Western Ghats, Almora, Pittorgarh, and Rudraprayag, so they also see a high intensity of landslides. Now you have written the differences of landslides in Western Ghats and Himalayas. So after that, it would be advisable that you should briefly write about the precautionary measure that could be taken. For example, afforestation, you can mention about afforestation and comprehensive landslide mapping, the other approach that could be taken up. And apart from that, the fencing that should be taken, that should be held across these infrastructure projects, and the ecologically sensitive region should be identified, and enough protection measures should be provided, and the other major aspect is illegal mining should be prohibited. So you can write 3 4 such measures that could prevent these landslides, and after writing such measures you can write a conclusion. So, landslide intensity has been increasing in recent years. That is mainly because of the increasing anthropogenic activities. So, in this light, along with the emphasis on sustainable development goals and sustainable development policies, so the existing indigenous knowledge should be utilized. So these existing indigenous knowledge will help control these landslides. For example, whether a social forestry could takes place, okay, and agroforestry could also take place. So such methods could be used to control landslides. And constructions in eco-sensitive zones need to be checked. For example, Western Ghats are considered as a eco-sensitive zones. The illegal constructions and encroachments should be regulated and they should be checked. So in this regard, you can write the need for implementation of Kasturi Rangan Committee recommendations and Madhav Gadkil Committee recommendations, and following National Disaster Management Authority guidelines with respect to landslides. So this is how you can conclude this answer. Okay, so the next question is with respect to the multi-dimensional implications of uneven distribution of resources or mineral resources. So yes, in different parts of the world, the minerals are unevenly distributed. For example, if you look at oil minerals, so oil minerals, we all know that they are concentrated in Middle East or West Asia. So when it comes to rare earth metals, so they are mostly located in South America and even in Central Asia. So therefore, the mineral resources were unevenly distributed. So in this context, we need to write the multi-dimensional implications of uneven distribution of these mineral resources across the world. So firstly, you need to define so what exactly the resource distribution means. So this resource distribution refers to the geographic occurrence or spatial arrangement of resources on Earth. Okay, so how resources are distributed across the earth and what is its spatial arrangement. So the study of that is called as a resource distribution. So it is known as resource distribution. So in other words, the resources are located where these resources are located, that is simply called as a resource distribution. So any particular place may be rich in resources, or a particular place also have a poor in resources. For example, a country like India. So we cannot say that India is rich in resources, and we cannot also say that India have a poor resources. So, and on the other hand, there are regions like Ruhr in Germany. So they are very rich in resources, whether it is coal, iron, and you can take the example of Far East, Russian Far East region, and it is very rich in several oil minerals. So therefore, there are different regions which are rich in mineral resources and poor mineral resource regions as well. Now we need to understand the implications of the uneven distribution of these resources. And first and foremost, we need to understand the pattern of human settlement and population distribution. So how the distribution of resources will determine the human settlement and population distribution. For example, imagine two places. So imagine two places. One place is called as A and the other place is called as B. So A has a rich resource potential and B has poor resource potential. So on the other hand, B has high population and A has low population. So in this context, the region which is rich in resources will have a high industrial activity. It creates better employment opportunities as well. So there's a possibility that people will migrate from region B to region A for better living standards and employment opportunities. So this is how the uneven distribution of resources will determine human settlement and population distribution. So because people very often tend to settle and cluster in places where resources are available. So whenever there are resources are available, industrialization takes place. They will get employment opportunities and they can also experience better living standards. So in modern days, industrialization is very often associated with inhuman working conditions, poor working conditions, exploitative nature of the work. But distribution or the availability of resources would very often attract population and they start migrating to those regions. So we can mention the examples of South America, Africa, and Australia. So they have a fewer of these geographic advantages. So they have small populations than North America, Europe, and Asia. Okay. So secondly, human migration. So I have just explained how human migration takes place basis on the basis of distribution of resources. So large group of people often migrate or they move to place that has resources. So for example, people have resources. For example, we take the example of water and a water scarce region to a water surplus region. So people will migrate to those regions. A large group of people will migrate to scarce resource region to a more resource region. Okay, so therefore the distribution of these resources will also impact the migration of human populations. So the Trail of Tears and westward movement and gold rush are some of the historical examples of migrations related to desire for land and mineral resources. So third, economic activity. Very often, the distribution of mineral resources will lead to the economic activities, the growth in economic activities in that particular region. Because uh, whenever resources are available, whenever the resources are readily available, they will be used for making the finished products. The raw materials will be used for making finished products. So therefore there will be a development of market, connectivity, infrastructure, investment, banking. Okay, so all these facilities are associated with availability of resources in a particular zone. Okay, so this would further propel the growth of economic activities in that region. Okay, so economic activities like farming, fishing, ranching, timber processing, mining, tourism. So all these activities are associated with the availability of resources in a particular location. Now, however, after that, the trade will also develop. For example, because of the uneven distribution of resources across the globe, the trade has been, taking place from a country which has more resources to a country which has a lesser resources. There's an example. Uh, Japan, despite being a small country and it is starved of resources, but now it is called as a developed country, Asian superpower. So it is primarily because of even though it lack resources, it is able to trade with the resource rich countries, and those resources are more and more efficiently and effectively used. So that helped Japan to become wealthy nation. Okay, now it is trading in resources, so it is purchasing resources. Now countries may not have the required amount of resources, but a trade enables them to acquire those resources from places that are far off. So example is Japan. Now, these mineral resources distribution very often associated with conflict, conquest, and war. Okay, so this is evident from past also. Now also in present day also there were several conflicts. Especially we can observe this in Africa. For example, diamond trade, and even terrorist organizations like Boko Haram in Nigeria. They are controlling the oil reserves. So therefore, it very often results in conquest, conflict, and war. So this neo-colonialism, so is it is also very often associated with access to resources and markets in different parts of the world. Okay, so the present day conflicts involve nations have been trying to control the resource rich territories. For example, the desire for diamond and oil resources have been the root cause of several armed conflicts in Africa. Now, after that, the wealth and quality of life will also be determined by the availability of resources, the quality and the quantity of the goods that are being available in a particular area. Okay, so however, a trend has been observed. So, Africa, despite being a resource rich country, a resource rich continent, it is still a poor country, a poor continent, and still armed conflicts, violence, war has been taking place in Africa, and several developed countries have been exploiting Africa and African resources. Okay, so there's no guarantee that the particular country has the resources, so it would become a wealthy or a prosperous country. So there's no such guarantee. However, on the other hand, if you look at Middle East, it is able to use the oil resources for its advantage. So thereby a multi-dimensional growth can be seen, a multi-dimensional development can be seen in the countries in the Middle East. So therefore, in conclusion, you just emphasize on the the need for a better integration of economies and supply chain resilience, and also uh, uh, reducing the conflict, conquest, and war which are being associated with these mineral resources. So, because it is good for the entire humanity. So, if we explore resources in a more responsible manner, so you can also bring the dimension of environmental protection here, because the exploitation of resources in an unsustainable manner would further cause several environmental problems. So this is how you can conclude this answer. So this is for today, and tomorrow we will discuss a few more questions. Okay. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also hit the bell icon and like the video, so that it motivates us to come up with more and more lectures. Okay. That will help you. Okay. Thank you.